What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Sai, back to you today with another sermon, asking you to drop a like down below, subscribing to the channel, and sharing this with your family and friends. Today, we will be coming from Genesis 18 and talking about hospitality. May God bless you and keep you, is our prayer.
Then the Lord appeared to him by the terebinth trees of Mamre, as he was sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. So he lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing by him. And when he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them, and bowed himself to the ground, and said, My Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass on by your servant. Please let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will bring a morsel of bread that you may refresh your hearts. After that you may pass by, inasmuch as you have come to your servant. They said, Do as you have said. So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah and said, Quickly, make ready 3 measures of fine meal, knead it and make cakes. And Abram ran to the herd, took a tender and good calf, gave it to a young man, and he hastened to prepare it. So he took butter and milk and the calf which he had prepared, and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree as they ate. Then they said to him, Where is Sarah your wife? So he said, Here in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return to you according to the time of life, and behold, Sarah your wife shall have a son. Now Sarah was listening in the tent door which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in age, and Sarah had passed the age of childbearing. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I have grown old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? And the Lord said to Abraham, Why did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I surely bear a child since I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return to you according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. And he said, No, but you did laugh. A closed fist will neither let something go, nor will it receive anything. All too often, we as Christians will close up our hands and hold on to the little bit that we have here on earth, instead of opening up our hands and receiving more from God. And that's what this particular passage of Scripture reminds me of. Now, it may not seem like it makes a lot of sense right now, but stick with me for just a little bit. What we have here is Abraham sitting outside the door of his tent. And as he's sitting there, the Bible, right at the beginning of this 18th chapter of Genesis, the Bible lets us know that the Lord appeared to Abraham. It was as he was in the door of his tent, and it was the middle of the day, during the heat of the day. He's sitting there, and the Lord appeared to him. And then the story quickly moves. But before I move into the rest of the story, I do want to point out that when God appears, there's a change in the atmosphere. You see, Abraham was just sitting there doing nothing, and then God appeared to him. And the next thing that we see Abraham doing is he is frantically rushing around. There's a sense of urgency because God was near. God was close. God had appeared to him, and he understood at the very least that God's presence changes things. And we've seen this already. I know we're early in Genesis. We haven't even got out of the first book of the Bible. We're not even halfway through the first book of the Bible when we meet Abraham right here in this 18th chapter. But we've seen God change the atmosphere already. Just his presence in Genesis chapter 1, he begins to speak things into existence, changing them. And then even after Adam and Eve fell, God comes along. And though he's disappointed, he still loves his creation, but their lives are forever changed. And then we come across and we find that in Genesis chapter 6, God is put out with man and the wickedness and evilness that is inside of man, that he goes to Noah and he tells Noah to build an ark, gives him the dimensions and everything. And he changes the trajectory of Noah and Noah's family's lives. So we see God just periodically when he runs into Abram, he is moving and directing Abram. And then God even changes his name from Abram to Abraham. God is changing the atmosphere all in these early parts of Genesis, making changes all over the place. And I'm only telling you this because when God shows up in our lives, when we feel like his presence is close to us, is near us, it ought to change the atmosphere. We should feel the presence of God, and when we do, we ought to look for ways to serve him just like Abraham did. So when Abraham had seen, or when God had appeared, the Lord had appeared to Abraham, the very next verse, the second verse says that Abraham raised up his eyes and he saw three men that were close to him. He rushes over to them and he begins to serve them. And he's doing it with a great sense of urgency. He is rushing around. He goes and he tells Sarah to hurry up and make some cakes. He goes and he pulls out a calf and he takes it to a servant. Hurry up and prepare this. We have some guests we need to serve. And he's taking care of their needs. He's showing them the hospitality of God, and there is no time to waste. It's amazing because he is rushing around trying to make sure that everything is just right. They can wash their feet because they've been walking across the dusty land. They can have something to drink, sit in the shade, get out of the sunlight. Make sure that you have enough to eat. As a matter of fact, they prepared so much food that they couldn't eat it all. He was showing them the hospitality of God. And he was doing that because God had shown him hospitality. God had shown Abraham how good the Lord could be to Abraham. And God knew Abraham, and Abraham knew that he did not deserve the goodness that God was bestowing upon him. Real quickly, I'll let you know that one of the things that stands out for me if I'm Abraham is that when Abraham went down to Egypt because of a famine, when he went down there the first time because of the famine, when he was on the way, he told his wife, Sarah, he says, look, you're a beautiful woman. And when we get down here, these men are going to want you. And if I jump up and tell them I'm your husband, I'm afraid they're going to kill me. So when we get down here, tell them you're my sister. Now, he wasn't completely lying. She's a half-sister, and that's a whole nother story. But he says, tell them you're my sister. Don't tell them you're my wife, because I'm afraid of what they will do to me if I tell them that we're married. I think they may kill me and take you. And so what happens, they get there, there's some servants that see Sarah, and they are, she cute. Oh my goodness. She looked good. And so one of them run up to Pharaoh, talking about, Pharaoh, this girl out here, she look good, doctor. Pharaoh said, well, go get her, let me see her. And so Pharaoh likes her, and now he's put her inside his little harem, and they trying to get her ready to be a wife of Pharaoh. And as soon as he did that, the Lord began to put some plagues in the house of Pharaoh. All because he had Sarah, and he was trying to make her one of his women. And somewhere along the line, the Lord talked to Pharaoh or somebody close to him and let Pharaoh know that he had Abraham's wife. And so that when Pharaoh came to Abraham, Pharaoh's asking the question, man, what have you done to me? Why didn't you tell me this was your wife? And right there, I believe Abraham was amazed at the power of God. I know I would have been. If I had set this thing up trying to make sure that I was living and doing all the things I could to survive, because I'm going to, remember, he went to Egypt not because he wanted to be there, but because there was a famine in the land. And he's trying to live long enough to get back to where he can set up camp and have a home. And so he saw the power of God. He saw the hospitality of God. He recognized how good God could be to him. And so Abraham's being good to these men because God had just shown up. And he's showing them the hospitality I believe that God has shown to him. And while they finish eating and they've gotten their fill, and now they come with an announcement. They say, hey, Abraham, where is your wife? Where is Sarah? They called, actually the Bible has it to where they called her by name. Now that would have been odd to me too, that I've got three strange men that I don't know, I'm serving them, and maybe during the conversation he may have told them that he was married to Sarah, I don't know, but they call her by name. They say, where is Sarah? And Abraham said, oh, she's over in the tent, she's here in the tent, and then the promise is made. She's going to have a child. I'm going to return after the I think it says something like the age of lifetime, whatever. Basically, I'm coming back in about 10 months, and your wife is going to have a child. And Sarah overheard them say this, and she could not believe it. It was an impossibility in her mind. As a matter of fact, because God had already told Abraham that he was going to be the father of many nations, I believe that's why Sarah had already sent Hagar in. Ishmael was born. That was going to be the promised child. Sarah had done all that she could to make sure that God's promise, God's word would come to fruition. She stepped in the way. I get it. We do it too, to try to make sure that Abraham would be the father of many nations. And surely Ishmael, because Abraham's seed had already been blessed, Ishmael would become the father of many nations too. But what God meant when he told Abraham that, he was talking about him and Sarah. And Sarah really didn't need to interfere in God's plan. But I can understand it. We get impatient too when it looks like what God says is going to come to pass. When it looks like time is passing by, we get impatient and we try to help the Lord out. And so she thought she'd already taken care of it, and she was past the childbearing age. So what do they mean I'm going to have a child? So she kind of laughs it off, and they overheard her and said, why is Sarah in there laughing? Is there anything too hard for God? This is what God is saying now to Abraham. Is there anything too hard for God? And we know that there's nothing too hard for God. That there are many things on this earth that we think are impossible, but as Jesus told the disciples after he told them about the rich young man that walked away and a camel going through the eye of the needle, with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. So there's nothing too hard for God. And here they are they're making this promise. It wasn't minced words. It wasn't some kind of off-the-cuff comment. They said, no, when we come back, I'm going to come back and she's going to have a child. And Sarah says, wait, no, I didn't laugh. And they, oh, yeah, you laughed. Yeah, you laughed. But it's going to happen. And so the promise was coming. The promise was declared. And how many of us recognize that when God makes a promise, it's as if it's already done? And that's what was happening here. But I don't want us to miss the fact that this promise came after Abraham had shown the hospitality of the Lord to these three strangers. And so often, I believe we in the church, we as individuals, we as a group of church believers miss the promises and the power of God because we refuse to show the hospitality of God, not just to strangers, but shoot, half the time we won't even show the hospitality of God to people in the church with us. We've got to get better at serving people in such a way that it doesn't lift us up, but it lifts up the name of God. Because if we will serve like God is the primary source of the blessings, then we can experience the power and the promises of God. What am I saying here? I'm saying that we need to open up our hand. We need to quit holding on to the little bit that we think we have down here and open up our hands so that we can receive what God has for us. We need to open up our hearts and quit harboring anger and walking around with mistrust and doing all of those things that keep our hearts closed, because when our hearts are closed, we cannot receive the blessings, the power, the promises of God and walk in them. My brothers and sisters, won't you join me in attempting to do all that we can to be hospitable to those that we meet, especially when we've had the presence of God. May God bless you. May God keep you is our prayer.
Thank you for joining us again today. But before we leave, please drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and share this with your family and friends. And if you are led to donate to this ministry, there's a link in the description below. That's it. Goodbye. That was terrible. And cut!